All right, well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. We are so excited for today's event. We've been looking forward to today's event for at least a month now for our virtual field trip to Kenya, to Ol Pejeta Conservancy, and the day has finally arrived. We are so excited. Up on your screen right now, I have it spotlit on our beautiful rhinos. You can see that they're just enjoying a little bit of dinner right now. And we're really excited today to be joined by Eva Kamini. So Eva is joining us today, and she is going to take over for a little bit, tell you a little bit about some of the amazing conservation work happening at Ol Pejeta. And then, of course, we're going to turn things over to the classrooms and let them fire away with some questions. So Eva, it's so great to see you. We have an awesome group of classrooms from across North America, and we're excited to get to know you and the rhinos today.
Hi, good morning. It's actually evening in East Africa, but welcome to Ol Pejeta. As Joe said, my name is Eva Kimani, and I brought along a few of my colleagues. They are somewhere here in the bushes. I'll introduce you to them. So that's my colleague, David, and he did a lot of work to get the rhinos here this evening. He was a great help to me. I have another one of my colleagues behind the camera is holding the screen for me. And these are keepers of the North and White rhinos. And we are all happy to be hosting all of you today on the conservancy. So now I want to do a small presentation. We'll get to see the rhinos a little bit more. There's Najin, Fatu, and Tauo. And I'll introduce them a little bit more later and tell you what they do. But for now, maybe Joe, we can go straight to our presentation.
Absolutely. So just give me one moment to switch the screen share. And then Eva, you tell me when you see the slides on your screen, okay?
Okay.
So I just spotlit my video. I am sharing my screen and they should be loading now. You just give me a shout if you see them.
Perfect. I see them now. Maybe we can have them on full screen.
Yeah, they should be going now. How does that look?
Amazing. Thank you very much. So once again, welcome to Ol Pejeta Conservancy. And I want to give you a little background of how Ol Pejeta began. We started back all the way in 1940s. But initially, Ol Pejeta was actually a cattle ranch. We were not always a conservation area. And we started as a cattle ranch, like many of our neighbors in Laikipia. And maybe we can go to the next slide, just showing a map of where we are located in Kenya. We are up north of Kenya. And where we are located, you find that the climate here is semi-arid. So a lot of the people who live in this part of Kenya tend to be cattle ranchers, pastoralists. And that's how Ol Pejeta began as a cattle ranch. But what happened is that over the years, somewhere around 1980s, two things happened. One thing is that rhino poaching had very much increased, and the government was looking to support areas that would come up as conservation areas. Another thing that happened is that the people who owned the land that is now Ol Pejeta found that ranching alone was not very profitable because Laikipia is also very rich in biodiversity. So there were a lot of wild animals and they kept breaking fences and pipes, which the ranchers had put in place for ranching. And they found that it was not very economical. So they also wanted to have a shift and find a way to accommodate the wildlife. So in 1980s, we started as a very small rhino sanctuary called Sweetwater's Rhino Sanctuary. And we started with 4 black rhinos. And I think if we go to the next slide, and now we have grown to be 90,000 acres of conservation area. That is Ol Pejeta. And our work, we are a private conservancy. We work to protect species. And we also work to support communities that live around the conservancy. That has been what we do up to now. There are certain things that make us different and unique. There's so many areas in Kenya where you will see a variety of wildlife, but there are certain things that make us different. And in this video, we'll see a little sneak peek of what Ol Pejeta has to offer. Perfect. Thank you. So obviously, based on what we are discussing today, we are home to the last two known remaining northern white rhinos, and these are rhinos that are originally from Sudan and the northern parts of Africa. And a lot of them, they have been essentially wiped out in the wild due to poaching, and of course due to a lot of political instability in those countries. And we are also the largest black rhino sanctuary in East Africa. We have a little over 130 black rhinos. And we're also the only place in Kenya you will see chimpanzees. And chimpanzees are man's closest cousin. And they are here because they have been given a sanctuary. They have been rescued from the illegal pet trade, black market pet trade, and they have been brought here to be given a sanctuary. If we go to the next slide. If we go to the next slide, we see, and this is we call it an onion structure, an onion ring structure of security. And at the very top, we have communities. So we believe that there is no conservation without communities. And therefore, we work very hard to build community bonds, to empower our communities, to give them alternative sources of livelihood so that they understand the value of conservation. And in turn, they become our biggest security support. We also have a boundary fence, 120-kilometer boundary fence. And we always say it's not poacher proof. It's there to just mark the boundary between us and the communities. And that community bond is really the most important fence, quote unquote. We have general security. These are unarmed teams. We have the rhino patrol teams that walk around monitoring rhinos. Their sole purpose is to monitor the rhinos, keep count of their numbers, of how many calves they're having, their health, and their general security. Now, we also have an armed team. We have a section of an armed team, and their work is to essentially secure the area for wildlife. So these are teams who are trained. They have paramilitary training, and they work to ensure that the area is secure. We also have a tracker dog unit, and the tracker dog unit, these are sniffer dogs, attack dogs, and they help the armed teams. They complement the efforts of the armed teams to secure the area. On our next slide. So our work, we have one job, and our one job is to ensure that the habitat of Ol Pejeta is suitable, is healthy, is functioning as it should, so that it supports the well-being of all the animals and plants and bird species that depend on this ecosystem. So we constantly monitor our animals, and we do monitoring for herbivores, we do monitoring for the birds, we do monitoring for the carnivores. But today specifically, we will focus on rhino monitoring. And on the next slide, yes. So rhino monitoring, we started as a rhino sanctuary, and to this day, rhinos are our key species of conservation. As I mentioned, we have 100.
How does it? Oh, sorry.
As I mentioned, we have 130 black rhinos. We also have 38 southern white rhinos. So the black rhinos are the ones that are native to Kenya, and the white rhinos are mostly from southern parts of Africa. South Africa, Zimbabwe, those countries. And I just wanted us to look a little bit about the difference between the two species. The black, they're all gray. All rhinos are gray. Yeah. So sometimes kids come or students come or visitors come and they expect to see rhinos that are white. Yeah. But essentially all rhinos are gray. The difference is that the black rhinos are browsers. They feed on trees and shrubs. And they are adapted for that because their upper lip is pointy, so it's able to grab the trees and shrubs. And you'll see that the southern white rhino is bigger again, and their heads hang low because they are adapted to feed on grass. They have a wide lip, which is where their name white came from. So in their countries in South Africa, the Afrikaans would pronounce the wide lip as white, their pronunciation. So that's how they got the name white, from the name wide. Yeah, they are wide lip. and of course the opposite of white became black. So that's how they got their name, but essentially they're all gray. Now moving on to the next slide. So our rhino monitoring is very intense. And as I mentioned, because we are a not-for-profit making organization, every revenue that is gotten on the conservancy goes back into conservation and community support. And in fact, a lot of resources and manpower goes into rhino protection and rhino monitoring. Now you can imagine trying to walk around to identify rhinos that look the same. Yeah, it's quite a task. So we have a naming system, and you will see on your screen there's a little picture of a rhino with some cuttings on the ears, and we call that rhino notching. So we notch the ears of the rhino to give it a specific number, which helps us identify them. And every notch gives it a specific. So you will see on the screen, for example, a notch on the bottom left ear will give you rhino number 50. Yeah, so if you have a rhino notched at the bottom left ear and at maybe the top right ear, that gives you number 51. So the notches have specific numbers that enable us to identify them. And the rangers walk around with this notebook, little booklet with all the pictures of the notched rhinos. And ideally, we are supposed to spot every rhino every day. Yeah, because we want to keep them safe and because they're critically endangered. And if a couple of days go by and we don't see a rhino, we have to call in for backup, for assistance from the Kenya Wildlife Service, because we always, unfortunately, fear the worst has happened. But our role is to ensure that they are safe and that they are protected and that we have a constant monitoring activity on them. On our next slide, is a very important aspect of rhino monitoring, and it plays into rhino security. So we have an anti-poaching dog unit of about 5 dogs. And these dogs, some of them are sniffer dogs, some of them are tracker dogs, and some are attack dogs. The picture on your screen is of a dog called Diego. And Diego is one of our attack dogs. He's very critical in rhino protection. He helps the armed teams be able to track poachers or potential poachers or any leads we may get on illegal activity in the conservancy. So they're a very vital part of rhino monitoring and rhino security. Next slide. So this picture, this is a very famous picture that you'll find a lot in the internet. Sorry, there's an airplane. Okay, good, we are back. So this picture, if you look at this picture, there's 2 things you can get from it. When the northern white rhinos came to Ol Pejeta back in 2009, there were 4 of them. And they came here because we wanted to try and see if being back in their native environment could stimulate breeding. Now, these rhinos, as I mentioned, they come from northern parts of Africa. So when a lot of them were killed because of insecurity and because of poaching for the rhino horn, a few scientists captured a few of the rhinos and took them to a zoo in Czech Republic. Okay, and they lived there for many years. But they discovered that them living in that zoo environment, they were not breeding very easily. It was, they were not having calves as expected. And so they thought bringing them back to Africa would stimulate them to breed and to have calves. And that's how they were brought to Ol Pejeta. So when they arrived in 2009, there were 4 northern white rhinos. There were 2 males and 2 females. And so it was Sudan, the famous Sudan, who passed away in 2018. And then there was Suni. And then there was the 2 females that we're going to be discussing about today, Najin and Fatu. And Najin is the daughter to Sudan. And Fatu is the granddaughter to Sudan. So they came like that, 4 of them. And so when they came, we were really hopeful. They were back in their natural environment. We wanted them to breed and have calves and rescue essentially the species from extinction. But unfortunately, in 2014, one of the males, Suni, passed away from natural causes. But even before he passed away, we had realized that even after mating with the females, no pregnancy was realized. So, it worried the scientists what was happening. So after a while, when Suni died, the two females remained. Sudan was quite advanced in age. So him being able to mate with the females was a long shot. And so we now had to turn to other alternatives to try and see if we can save this species from extinction. Now, this picture I was talking about, it shows the threat that we have put on wildlife. That is a war, that when these animals arrived, they had to be under 24-hour surveillance, okay? The war that has been meted out on these animals is great and it's brutal. But this picture also shows that we hold the power to protect these animals. We hold the power to protect these species. So we can choose. Do we want to be the ones bringing the war to the animals? Or do we want to be the ones to secure them, to protect them, to preserve and conserve these species? So the two females today, on the next slide, you'll see them. We started with, so after we realized they were not having babies naturally, the scientists resorted to IVF methods. Now, IVF stands for in vitro fertilization. And we thought that is the only way we are going to save this species. So last year, we had a group of scientists, after many years of research. Now you realize this is the first time it's being done anywhere in the world. It's never been done before, artificially reproducing of rhinos. So last year, after the scientists, after many trials and many thoughts and many deliberations, they came to Kenya. So it's a group of scientists from everywhere around the world, including Kenya. And they came twice, and they were able to harvest the eggs of the two northern white rhinos. And because we had already collected semen from the two males, Suni and Sudan. Sudan now again died in 2018 of very advanced age. She was 45 years old, which is pretty old for rhinos. But prior we had collected sperm from him. So after they harvested the eggs from the rhinos, they have been taken to a lab. And we are going to artificially make embryos, which we did. So we got 3 viable embryos. And these 3 viable embryos, unfortunately, after we found out that the northern whites were not being able to get pregnant, it was discovered that they have a problem with their uterus, both of them. And in fact, one of them has a problem with the back leg because of living in those concrete zoos for so long. It affected her legs, and now she's not able to carry that weight of a rhino pregnancy. So we decided that a southern white rhino would be the surrogate mom. So these 3 embryos will be input into 3 southern white rhinos, which will act as the surrogate mom to the northern white rhinos. And those efforts, hopefully, they'll bring back the embryos this year, and hopefully that process will be fast-tracked somewhere down the line along the year. So next slide. So some of our challenges, poaching, of course, is one of those challenges to conservation. Poaching is the biggest threat to conservation, and poaching is only there because human beings have put a higher value on the price of animal tusks or fur or teeth than the animal itself. And because of that, many animals, not just in Africa, but many animals have been brutally killed all over the world. And poaching will only stop if we stop the demand for animal products, for animal trophies. We don't need these products. You know, they're not food, they're not clothing. It's only human greed has been able to push the poaching epidemic even further. And therefore, we need to be the ones, to stop buying wildlife trophies. And we also need to be the ones to speak up for these animals, create awareness, create education so that we can save our species. Human-wildlife conflict is another issue that faces conservation. As the human population is growing, we are now 7+ billion people, we are pushing animals into smaller and smaller spaces. And these animals now get to have more conflict with the people living next to conservancies because, you know, if there's a drought or if they move out immediately outside the conservancy, you find that there are people who own land, communities who live there. and that increases human-wildlife conflict. Land fragmentation is another issue that affects conservation, because you find that as we are increasing in number as human beings, we are fencing off pieces of land, we are closing off dispersal areas. Animals can no longer move or migrate from one area to another. Again, the carrying capacity is another issue. As I mentioned, we have 130 black rhinos, the largest number in East Africa, and that already we have crossed our carrying capacity. We reached our carrying capacity, which was 120 in 2017. So we are now looking to expand into other land that's next to the conservancy. We have acquired additional 20,000 acres of land, and we are going to move our rhino conservation that way. And last but not least, more frequent and prolonged drought is another huge threat. Climate change, global warming, all these things are contributing to erratic weather, changes in climate. You can no longer predict when the rainy season or the dry season is. And these prolonged droughts are really affecting wildlife because resources are limited, and they're increasing issues with pastoralist communities who want to look for pastures and water for their cattle. Sometimes they end up invading conservancies because of those very long droughts, and they want to feed their cattle. So I think we can go into the live footage, but yes, thank you very much. That's that's the end of my presentation. And maybe we can go back to seeing the rhinos. They're here. They're very excited.
All right. All right, Eva, I'm back. Thank you for that awesome presentation. I think the work being done at Ol Pejeta is amazing. It's really important conservation work. I know it's not easy, but people like yourself and the rangers and other people in the park are doing incredible work. So thank you for the work you're doing to protect a species that's in big trouble. Well, several species of rhino.
Absolutely. It's a lot of hard work from a lot of dedicated men and women who make this possible. But we need more men and women. We need all the boys and girls who have joined us today. We need them to join this movement if we are going to make a difference. We need them to look at your local areas. What animals are endangered where you live? Yeah. If you talk to your grandmother or grandfather, what animals do they say they used to see a lot of and now they don't see them anymore? You know, find time to volunteer at your local zoo. Find time to spread the word on your very social media accounts, very huge social media accounts. Spread the word, educate people. Let's create awareness. And it's not just the rhinos. Rhinos just represent species that we are losing. The United Nations estimates that in another few years, about 1 million species are facing extinction. And you can imagine that is everything from species of insects that we need for pollination of our food. It's species of marine life. It's species of birds that we need for pollination or cleaning up of our environment. All these species of trees that we are cutting down in the Amazon, they are going to affect our quality of life because we depend very highly on ecosystem services for us to have clean water to drink, to have clean air to breathe, and to have food on our table. So it's our responsibility to protect our species. And rhinos are just a great ambassador for what's happening and what we need to do. They're a wake-up call, essentially, that we need to do something. It's high time that we make a difference. And you, wherever you are, in your school, at home, you can make that difference. You just need to look and be dedicated and decide to take a step, and you can actually do it.
All right, absolutely. Great message, Eva. And I think speaking of our classrooms, how about we meet some of them and get some questions?
Absolutely.
All right. So first of all, I want to give a shout out to the classrooms tuning in via YouTube. Thanks for joining us today. A few of you have introduced yourselves already. Mr. Ulrich's fifth graders in Columbus, Indiana. We've got fifth graders hanging out with us in Nova Scotia. We've got Welsh Intermediate School in Brantford, Connecticut. Looks like we've got a classroom joining us in Cornwall in the UK. We also have another group, Mrs. Herget's group, joining us from Connecticut. So lots of classrooms tuning in. Don't forget to send us in some questions. Let's meet our first live classroom. So let's see. Let's start off. Let's go to Mrs. Dodson's group. They're hanging out with us in Salem. Let me get their microphone turned on. How we doing, Salem?
Good.
All right. Who's got a question?
Is there a way to stop the poaching of the rhinos?
Yes, there's absolutely a way to stop the poaching of the rhinos. One is that government, our government, your government, they need to have very firm policies on protecting the animals. For example, in Kenya, if you're caught, if you're a poacher and you're caught, you're sentenced to life imprisonment. Yeah. So that the law, having the law protecting the animals will ensure that the bad people will not want to take that risk because they know they'll be jailed for many years. The consequences are huge. Another way to stop the poaching is to create awareness like we are doing today. Yeah. So the rhino horn is made from keratin. And keratin is the same thing that makes your fingernails and your hair. So unfortunately, some people in some parts of the world believe that it has medicine, which is not true. And this is because that belief has been passed on from one generation to another. So how do we break that belief? We create awareness. And now we have the internet. We can do that. We can speak to people from all over the world. We can tell them that, no, actually, they do not have medicinal value. And by showing them how beautiful they are alive, then hopefully people will start to value these animals more than their horn. So two things we can do is create awareness, like what we're doing now. You guys can also create that awareness in your school, in your social media. You can have campaigns. Again, we can also have environmental clubs. Yeah, and in our environmental clubs, we can spread awareness. We can do activities, maybe to even tree planting, protect the habitat of the animals, so that even as we are protecting them from poachers, we are also protecting their habitat, whether it's planting trees and forests and gardens, so that our birds and other animals have a home.
All right. Great question to get us started. Let's go now to Mrs. Collins' class. They're joining us in Rhinebeck, New York. Looks like some fifth graders. Let's get that microphone turned on. How we doing, fifth graders?
Great. Do the southern white rhinos interact with the black rhinos that you keep?
Absolutely. So now I want my colleague who is behind the camera, he'll answer that question. His name is James. James, you have a question from the boys and girls?
Hi, thank you so much. My name is James. In a typical environment, in answering that question, they do overlap and can live and interact within the ecosystem, but they don't end up in any conflict because the food requirements for both black and white rhinos are very distinct. Black rhinos are browsers in nature, so they basically target on leaves and twigs at the top, while these rhinos, the white rhinos, are grazers by nature, and so they always graze on grass. And so you realize in the ecosystem, they can overlap because they don't have to fight for food. And also being in mind that both the northern, the southern, and the black rhinos are very distinct rhinos. So the genus and species of the black is completely different from those of the white rhinos. So they cannot crossbreed, they cannot mate to have young ones. They're completely distinct, even though all of them are rhinos. And so they can have sort of social bonds when they meet each other, understand the rhinos, but they cannot hang out together or even live in the same social bond, but they overlap within their ecosystem.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for answering that question. And thank you to our classroom from New York for that great question. This time we are going to go to, let's go to Florida, North Palm Beach, Florida. Mr. Levogue has some students hanging out with him. Let's get their microphone turned on. Oh, Mr. Levogue, I'll need you to unmute for me today, and then we'll get a big hello.
Say hi.
Hey, Florida.
Hi. What, Don?
All right. So go ahead and ask your question.
Brittany's walking. I mean, Destiny is walking. Sorry.
Go ahead, Destiny.
We are in Florida. What can we do to help?
I'll have my colleague Steven, who is joining us just now. He'll answer that question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your question. My name is Steven, and
And the most interesting thing that you can do right now in wherever that you are, one, conservation does not really require that much money to say that I want to do conservation on a species, but it requires you to reach out to more people, tell them of the plight of the rhinos, for example, which we're using as ambassadors to talk about what we are doing in conservation. You see, the rhinos behind me are, for example, an example of what we humans have done up to now. So what you can do right now as a student is mostly to conduct education, to teach your peers, go at home, tell your parents what you have learned. And through this, we hope that we create a ripple effect such that everyone in the community is able to be reached. I hope that I've answered your question very well. And also in a capacity whereby you're able to contribute, please contribute. Some of these rhinos take a lot of money. And through the small charities, I believe 1 shilling can end up to do a magnitude of something greater. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. I think just to add on what Stephen has said, do you have a zoo in your local area?
Let me turn the microphone back on. Let's check.
Do you want to say yes?
Say yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
So you can start one weekend, gather your friends, ask your parents to help you. You can go to your local zoo and volunteer for a day. Go help clean out with the animals, feed them, and all those kinds of things. Again, another thing you can do in your backyard at home, plant some trees, plant some flowers that will provide a home for insects, for birds, for other creatures to live. Yeah, go do some tree planting. Yeah, if there's a tree planting activity, go participate, plant some trees. It will provide a home for some very important animals and bird species.
All right, awesome. Great answers and some great things that students can do right away at home. And of course, go home tonight and talk to your parents, talk to your friends, tell them what you learned today, because that's the easiest thing you can do to start before trying bigger things. All right, let's see. Let's take a little trip to Ontario, Canada this time. We've got Mrs. Rambarden's group of 5th and 6th graders hanging out with us. Let me get their microphone turned on. How are we doing, 5th and 6th graders?
My question is, what is your favorite part of researching the rhinos?
So James Mwenda will answer that question. You asked what is our favorite part of researching about rhinos?
Right. So thank you so much. I think the overall understanding of how rhinos are endangered is an overwhelming thing that we all need to comprehend, that we all need to come together and do something about. Before I came to work here, I didn't know what was happening around the rhinos. And when I came and worked with them, I realized how much I need to invest my energy and my time to make sure that these animals are safe and they're protected. So you find them to be very beautiful, majestic. I don't know whether you can look and see how prehistoric they look. They're very, very amazing creatures. And the sad thing is, because of our greed, we have made their numbers to be just the last 2 surviving rhinos that you can see right behind me here. So my greatest part has been realizing that we can do something about them, and especially with the young people, our planet needs all of us to join hands to make sure that, as Eva was saying earlier on, our food security is guaranteed, our health and our wealth, which is all wrapped in how well our ecosystem is wrapped together, can stay still in cohesion. And so I have learned that we are the people that are needed to make sure that we protect these animals. And I believe that we can do something. And with all the energy we have as a young people, there's so much more that we can achieve.
All right, great question and a great answer. It's so cool to be able to see these rhinos. They're so beautiful to see them, to watch them doing their thing. I'm going to grab a question from YouTube now. We've got a question coming in from Cornwall in the United Kingdom, and they're wondering about the white rhinos. How big can the white rhinos get?
The rhinos you see behind me, this is the elder northern white rhino. She's nudging, and the one on the left is Fatu the youngest. And far behind is the southern white rhino. she's fully grown. All these rhinos are fully grown, and they can get up to, females can get up to around 2.4 tons to 2.5 tons on average. Males can get all the way to 2.7 to 2.8 tons. So they are that large. And size-wise, these are fully grown, so we wouldn't expect them to grow any bigger. But the black rhinos are smaller in size. They completely look different than these ones. So they're smaller, and they have a concave shape at the back as compared to the white rhinos that are convex at the back. And the overall size is bigger. If you talk about the head, the ears, they are bigger with the white rhinos as opposed to the black rhinos.
Yeah, so they're probably bigger than your school bus. Imagine your school bus, a little heavier.
All right, that's pretty amazing. We're going to jump to Miss Sharp's group joining us in Parma. Let me get their microphone turned on. How we doing, Miss Sharp's class?
How are we doing, guys?
All right, who's up?
Good job, Connor.
Hi. How did you guys determine the carrying capacity for rhinos?
So the carrying capacity is determined by so many factors. And one thing is that, we have to do a lot of constant monitoring. So the constant monitoring enables us to know our area of land, the resources that we have. Again, we have to know how much, so rhinos are very territorial. So you want to know a rhino, how much in terms of territory, how much space does it need? So you say one rhino needs X amount of space per day. This is how much they eat per day, per week. So these are the amount of shrubs and trees and bushes that they need to feed on, or grass, for example, is like the white rhinos are grazers. So they're able to calculate. Yeah, so there's a formula, there's a scientific formula where they're able to calculate your general land area versus how much area, the territory of a rhino versus what resources are there. They're able to calculate. So every rhino needs this amount of space. Every rhino, this amount of space. And then they're able to say, so for 90,000 acres, you can only take 120 black rhinos. So it's a lot of scientific formulas that help calculate that.
All right, great question. Let's take a quick trip now. Let's visit, there we go, Mrs. Wells' class. 6th graders joining us in Channel Porte Basque. So let me get their microphone turned on. How we doing, boys and girls? All right, who's got a question?
Which one are your favorite rhinos?
Sorry, say that again kindly.
Which one are your favorite rhinos?
Which one are our favorite rhinos? I think all rhinos are special. They're very unique. So every rhino has a very distinct, behavior and character. And maybe the keepers would be best placed to say because they are with the rhinos every day. Which ones are their favorite? Me personally, I like Tauo down there. She's the southern white. Now Tauo did a very important job because when the northern white rhinos came, they had lived in a zoo for very long. They had been born there, some of them. So they didn't even know how to eat grass. They didn't know how to be wild rhinos. And so when they were brought on Ol Pejeta, they were put together with Tauo, and she taught them how to be wild rhinos. She taught them how to be feisty, how to graze, how to be wild like a rhino. So she did a very important job. Another thing that Tauo will do, she'll be the surrogate mom. Yeah, she'll carry the little northern white rhino baby, and she might hopefully be the hope for these two girls. The species of the northern white rhinos is essentially in the hands, or is it in the feet of Tauo. So she's my favorite. She's very feisty. She has a personality. She's very upbeat, feisty. Me personally, she's my favorite of the two.
All right. Well, she's got a very important job, and I can see a couple little monkeys have joined you. What species are those?
So these are vervet monkeys, And the vervet monkeys know, because when we feed the rhinos in the evening, we put a little some carrots, we put some pellets. So they are joyriders. They know there's food in the evening. So they come to steal the carrots from the rhinos. So they're called vervet monkeys.
All right, very cool. Mrs. Aldrich's class is joining us in Morris, Illinois. Let me get their microphone turned on. How we doing, Illinois?
Good. We're good.
Does notching cause any pain to the rhinos?
So what happens is, for the notching to happen, the rhinos have to be put to sleep, right? So they're tranquilized, they're unconscious during the notching. And when they wake up, maybe a little, but because the notching will happen when they're asleep, it will take some time before they wake up. And they do put some, what do we call them? Some medicine to numb the pain when they're notching the animals. So once they wake up, it's done. They were numbed while it was happening. They don't even realize what happened. So no, it doesn't cause them pain.
All right, excellent. We're going to take another little virtual trip here. Let's go to Sayreville, New Jersey. Fifth graders hanging out with Mrs. Hakanos. Let me get that microphone turned on. How are we doing, fifth graders?
Hi, my name is Kaylee, and I would like to know, how soon do you think you'll be able to impregnate the rhino surrogates?
Very good question. Thank you. We hope that it will happen this year. Okay, so we already have the 3 embryos that were successfully fertilized. And so now the scientists are trying to figure out, because now the rhinos have to be made ready to receive the embryos. And for them to be made ready, they have to receive some hormonal stimulation. Yeah. And this hormonal stimulation will take like 20 days. So they have to have some pills so that they are stimulated to be able to receive the embryos. So once the scientists figure out how they'll do that, then hopefully within this year, they will come, and before the end of the year, hopefully, we will have 3 southern white rhinos with 3 different embryos. Hopefully all of them will take. And then hopefully by the end of 2020, we'll invite all of you guys for a baby shower.
All right, very cool. I'll have to start thinking about a gift. What gift do you bring for a rhino? All right, back to YouTube. We have a couple questions I want to ask you from the YouTube community. The first one is, where is the demand for the horn the greatest? This is Mr. Pugini's group. And then we have another question from Mrs. Grant Townsend's group. And RC is wondering if they have any predators, the rhinos.
Thank you. Very great question. Now, the biggest market for the rhino horn is Asia. So Vietnam, China, those countries, because traditional Chinese medicine has passed on that belief that the rhino horn is an aphrodisiac. I won't go into the details because we have a few 5th graders, but that's what they believe. And that is what has pushed the killing, the massacre of the rhinos. So it's Asian countries primarily because of the belief in traditional Chinese medicine. The other question, if I remember correctly, do they have predators? A nice large pride of lions can take down a rhino. It's very hard, but if they are a good, huge number of lions, they can absolutely take down a rhino. In fact, we had an incident in 2017. So I'm just trying to be safe here. He might horn bat me. So in 2017, we actually had an incident where one particular pride of lions got so large, they hunted a rhino. Absolutely. And because again, we are trying to protect, if it was back in the day when we had plenty of rhinos, that would be perfectly natural for them to do. But now we are trying to conserve the rhinos, but we're also trying to conserve the lions. So unfortunately, what happened is that a part of that pride had to be translocated to a different national park. But a few weeks later, the remaining members of that pride, they hunted another rhino. I guess they figured rhino is big enough meat for all of us. So yeah, they do have natural predators. The lions could be one of their biggest ones. and of course humans. Humans are the biggest. Then lions. A big pride of lions could take a rhino down.
All right. Well, Eva, first of all, I want to do a huge shout out to our YouTube classrooms. We had such a great group of classrooms on YouTube joining us today, Canada, the US, the United Kingdom. Thank you for sending in your awesome questions. Our classrooms on camera today. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Thank you for your really well thought out questions. And Eva, a huge thank you to you. A huge thank you to your team who joined us today, keeping the rhinos where they needed to be, as well as your team members who answered some questions. Thank you so much for all the work you're doing. We cannot wait to do more trips to Ol Pejeta Conservancy, and we cannot wait to learn more about the conservation work and the future of the northern white rhinos.
No, absolutely. It was our pleasure to have all these boys and girls on Ol Pejeta today virtually. We're very excited to bring more amazing videos like this to your classroom. Thank you for amazing questions. You really challenged us. Very well thought out questions. And I think from all my team today that joined me, that worked really hard to make this day happen. Asante sana from Kenya.
Bye. Thank you.
All right. Last thing we're going to do, boys and girls, I'm going to turn the microphones on. Let's get nice and loud. A good goodbye and thank you so the team can hear you. Microphones are on. Go ahead, boys and girls.
Bye.
Thanks again. Thank you, everybody who joined in today. Thank you to the classrooms. Thank you to the team at Ol Pejeta Conservancy. Eva, a huge thank you to you for making this happen, and we cannot wait for our next trip to Kenya. Thanks so much, everybody.
Absolutely. We look forward to. Thank you.
Thank you.